as the elected official who represents all of you on the Board of Supervisors. No decisions will be made this evening. Tonight's town hall is about providing an opportunity for folks to learn about the history of the ban, as well as related efforts being conducted by Caltrans and the air quality study that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District will currently take up. The Caltrans and the Air District work is only at the beginning stages. You will learn more about that shortly during the presentations from both of those agencies this evening. As an elected official, you know, I'm a parent and also a grandparent. I also enjoy hearing from our future leaders, our youth. And that's one reason why I wanted to have an opportunity for the Life Academy students to speak this evening. Tonight is no different. I've heard from many concerned individuals in reference to the 880 corridor, in many meetings speaking about air quality along the 880 corridor. And I want to applaud the students and the Life Academy for bringing the ban to the attention of KQED, who then reached out to me. The advocacy of these young people and others, you'll hear more about this evening. And I hope you and your family can consider and be very proud of these young people for speaking up. What's different now than what was the case in the 1990s when I supported the ban is the fact that we are now looking at these issues through the lens of equity. And I know when I was on the Oakland City Council back in the 90s, we didn't look at it through that lens. That wasn't even a consideration, the issues of equity at that time. But now the issues of equity are more prominent in our contemporary considerations. Also, air quality has definitely arisen as a concern, and the Air District will be talking about that. And then the Caltrans study, as I mentioned, they are supposed to be doing a study periodically, and they haven't conducted a study since the 1990s. We don't want to move one problem from one community or one area to another area. Let me repeat that. We don't want to move a problem from one community to another. So that's one reason why the studies will be important that the Air District will be conducting. And if Caltrans gets the funding, the study they'll be conducting. It's my understanding that both the Air District and Caltrans will be trying to coordinate their studies. And their studies will basically commence and be coordinated sometime beginning in the new fiscal year of July 2022. They've also informed me that it'll probably take them a good year to conduct their studies. So we probably won't have any findings or results from their studies until fiscal year 2023. And then whatever recommendations, whatever findings come up with, we'll have a chance, all of us, to discuss that, consider it, and decide what to do with it. Ultimately, let me make sure you're clear on this. To change the ban of trucks on 580 would require legislative action from Sacramento. I've spoken with Ellen Corbett, who was the assembly person at the time, who carried the legislation to make the truck ban on 580 state law. So that is state law. And to have that change, the state would have to repeal that law. But the truck ban goes back to before there was a 580. It goes back to when MacArthur Boulevard was just there and trucks were banned on MacArthur Boulevard. So there's been a history of trucks being banned on that corridor for 70 or more years. But it's also been brought to my attention that the ban on 580 of trucks is one of the few bans of its nature in the entire country. And I think Caltrans will speak more to that. So that's some of the context for tonight's town hall, to provide you with more information, to provide transparency, and for me, quite frankly, to do my job. So with that being said, I'd like to take a moment to introduce all of the elected officials and or their offices that have joined us this evening. Then we'll have the young people speak. So from the state of California, we have the office of Nancy Skinner, represented by Katrina Robinson. From Alameda County, the office of the president, Keith Carson, we have Amy Strago. From Alameda County Office of Education, Aisha Knowles, the board president. The city of Oakland, I've already said, Mayor Schaaf. We also have the office of the council president pro tem, Shang Tao, represented by Brian Harami, excuse me. And we also have Council member at large, Rebecca Kaplan, represented by Christine. Then from the city of San Leandro, we have Mayor Pauline Cutter, who will be speaking, and we have Council member Corina Lopez, excuse me. City of Alameda, we have Council member John Knox White. AC Transit, we have Gene Walsh, Director Ward 2. And I believe that's all of the elected officials and or their offices that I've been notified of at the moment. I also want to take a moment just to thank my staff for all the work they did to put together this evening's town hall meeting. I want to thank the staff from Caltrans, the staff from the Bay Area Quality Management District. I want to thank, we met with the Alameda County Transportation Commission. I want to thank them and everybody who had a chance to help us organize for tonight's meeting. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if we could have the young people from Life Academy make some remarks, because as I said, they're the ones who brought this up with me about a year ago. And that's what's prompted my desire to pursue looking into this matter. So can we have them speak, please?
First up, we have Angel.
Hello?
We can hear you, Angel.
All right. Hello, my name is Angel Barrera Herrera, and I wanted to share something. That, as a student in Oakland, I am very worried about the pollution happening in this world. Oakland only allows diesel burning trucks on Highway 880 that runs right through my neighborhood. This leads to a lot of problems of low quality air and way too much gas. These trucks is the devil's breath because this smoke can end up killing many people. This is a problem because many people are actually dying because of this. This is unfair because why do we have to get this smoke? It's like saying we don't matter and then throwing toxic at us just because the color of our skin. There are many ways we can improve. If semi trucks use electricity instead of fossil fuels, this will help by people not dying because how bad the air quality is. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. And is there one more speaker? One other student?
No, we had Belinda, Angel, Michelle, and Sophia. Sophia, if you could raise your hand. Okay, Sophia, I think you are on.
Hi, my name is Sofia Gutierrez Perez, and I live in Oakland, California. I am a student at Life Academy for Health and Biosciences. I just want to share this fact that relates to this topic, and it's that people who live closer to the 880 freeway have been more exposed to asthma, bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or any respiratory problems. It can also cause cardiac problems, which is the reason why people who live on the 580 freeway are most likely to live 7 years longer than the ones who live by the 880. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that the last young person?
Belinda.
I see Belinda's hand up.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Belinda Castro Ambries, and I live in Oakland, California. I am an 7th grader at Life Academy for Health and Bioscience. As a student in Oakland, I am worried about my generation. 880 is located in mostly Black and brown community. This is a big deal because I'm brown. It's not fair that colored people have to deal with diesel trucks passing by their neighborhoods. Diesel trucks are causing pollution. This is really serious because a lot of people have asthma and other heart issues, which means that bad polluted air is going through their lungs. It's not fair that people near 580 don't have to deal with the same problem 880 is dealing with. All I want is for equality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that all the students?
That is all that I see. In the event that we missed anyone, I apologize, and feel free to indicate that in the chat. You can use the raise your hand option.
Okay, I want to thank the students from Life Academy because, as I said, they spoke with me about a year ago and they prompted this issue. And they were sixth graders at the time, and now they're seventh graders. So I wanted to give them an opportunity to speak this evening. So what I'd like to do now, and as I said, we really don't want to move one problem from one area to the next. And I think that's the Air District and Caltrans, their studies will help us figure out what we can do and what we should do. So what I'd like to do now is go right to Caltrans, because I believe Caltrans is going to be the first presentation.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. Cameron, would you please put up our slides? Great. Again, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Supervisor Miley, for the opportunity to be here and to participate in this important discussion. I also want to thank the students from Life Academy, Angel, Sophia, Belinda, for bringing the concerns to the Supervisor's office. My name is Dina Altansi, and I am the Caltrans District Director for the district serving the 9 Bay Area counties. And here tonight with me, I have our Deputy for Transportation Planning and Local Assistance, Ms. Jean Finney, and also Mr. Cameron Oakes, who's our branch chief for freight coordination. Next slide, please. So I want to take the next few minutes to give you just a brief history on the ban, how it came about, what led to it, and how we arrived to where we're at today. And then I would like to share what opportunities we see here and what we can do to move together forward. What you're looking at right here is a map of the area in question. The map here is showing the where the ban is. If you're looking at the map, it's the red line here is highlighting the limits, which starts from Foothill Boulevard in San Leandro to the south or to the east, to Grand Avenue in Oakland to the north or the west. And this is approximately 9 miles long. So the current situation is that no heavy trucks are allowed between those 2 points on the Interstate 580. And although we do allow passenger buses and paratransit vehicles to go through. So normally what the trucks would do is they would go around traveling westbound on the 580 to the area where the junction is with 580 and the 238. Then they would travel north on 238 to Interstate 880 corridor and access from there their destinations at Port of Oakland, Oakland International Airport, and then the industrial areas also and distribution centers in East Oakland and San Leandro. Or they would just travel through there to get to other destinations throughout the Bay Area, such as Contra Costa County or the San Francisco Peninsula and the North Bay. During major incidents or other issues on adjacent freeways, CHP and Caltrans would temporarily allow trucks to travel that segment of the 580. Next slide, please. So how did this all come about? And I think Supervisor Miley already alluded to some of it, but I'll just go briefly over the history. Predating the freeway, this used to be MacArthur Boulevard. And back in the 1950s, the city of Oakland originally prohibited heavy trucks on that particular route. When the freeway was constructed, and that was in the early 1960s, I believe it was completed in 1965, due to the city ordinance, the truck prohibition was continued by the Federal Highway Administration and Caltrans. Following that, the ban was reviewed on an annual basis. But in 1972, Caltrans made a decision to not continue reviewing it any further. In 1990, the California Trucking Association proposed to lift the ban as part of an Interstate 880 corridor analysis that was happening at the time. and Caltrans back then declined to study it due to strong local opposition. Later in 1999, Caltrans came back and proposed to study to reverse the ban, but it was again, the political climate at the time didn't really encourage that, and it was opposed by Oakland and the California legislature. Later that year, the Oakland City Council passed a resolution affirming the provision of trucks on Interstate 580 through the city. And a year later, in 2000, Assembly Bill 500 was drafted and adopted into officially codifying the truck ban into the California Vehicle Code. Next slide, please. So where do we go from here? For some of you, you may know this already, but I just want to emphasize where we're coming from at Caltrans. In the early 2020, Caltrans unveiled a new strategic management plan. Our new strategic management plan has really unprecedented focus on equity. The department acknowledges that community of color and underserved communities experienced fewer benefits and had a greater share of negative impacts associated with our state transportation system. So with that perspective in mind, we have started taking a closer look at what our practices are and what we can do internally and externally to make sure that equity is at the forefront of everything that we are doing. So right now, from an external perspective, we are looking at the way we plan, design, construct, operate, and maintain our system from an equity lens. Our district here in the Bay Area started taking a closer look at around the Bay Area in particular, and what opportunities do we have to address equity issues and to improve outcomes for all moving forward. Re-evaluating and reassessing the truck ban is certainly well aligned with that direction. Also, the recent articles highlighting racial inequities and elevated air quality levels on Interstate 880 compared to Interstate 580 have rekindled the issue and brought it to the forefront. So Caltrans has recently begun meeting with the City of Oakland to propose a new truck ban removal feasibility study to be conducted. Oakland City staff have been very supportive of this proposal, and we are working very closely with them to develop the study proposal to look at these issues associated with the ban. What we are planning to do, or what our intent would be, is to focus that study on four basic and interconnected components. The first would be the transportation studies concerning the truck access in general and other issues concerning our infrastructure, our roads, our pavement, and also the traffic diversion. The second component would be health studies concerning air quality, noise, and other social impacts, both on the Interstate 580 and the Interstate 880. The third component would be an equity assessment of the impacts and the benefits on both routes and corridors. And then the final component, which is really a very important component to us, is the community engagement plan. As we move forward, engaging the community is going to be a very important piece of this. Caltrans is seeking to develop this in partnership with other stakeholders, including government agencies, regional, county, and city partners, trucking association, private industry, to achieve really mutual solutions here. The discussion will be very extensive when it comes to community engagement along both corridors, including residents, of course, of Oakland, San Leandro, and unincorporated Alameda County areas. So where are we at this stage? At this point in time, we do not have funding identified for this effort. However, we are really keen on finding a funding source for it. And one of the available potential funding sources is the State Planning and Research application. The State Planning and Research grant. We are in the process of applying for this grant, and we're really optimistic that this study will compete very well for it. Our hope is to also find other partner agencies that will want to contribute funding to this study as well. If we are successful in securing the funds, it will be available to us at the beginning of the next fiscal year, and we can anticipate to start the actual study in early 2023. At the conclusion of the study, a recommendation by Caltrans and the partners, along with the next steps, will be provided. Please do keep in mind, as Supervisor Miley mentioned earlier, that a recommendation supporting lifting the ban would require a legislation in order to be implemented. Next slide, please. So I would like to really stop here and thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And I am happy to take questions at the Q&A session. As I mentioned earlier, I also have Ms. Jean Finney and Mr. Cameron Oakes from our team that will be leading that study. With that said, I turn it back to you, Supervisor.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for that information. I think that was very informative. I want to make it clear that, goods movement, the movement of goods by truck, we can't do without that. That needs to take place. That's fundamental to our society, to have goods being moved by truck. So we're not going to eliminate the trucks, but can we get cleaner burning trucks? I think that's something that I think the Air District will probably be speaking to that. Caltrans will be doing their study. And as was said, we're going to try to look for mutual benefits so that this isn't a burden that's going to be shifted or placed on another community. We have a lot of questions in the chat. And I also want to say, I did talk with former Assembly person and State Senator Ellen Corbett, and she said at the time when this was taken up in the 1990s, and as I said, I was on the Oakland City Council at that time, there was overwhelming support to keep the ban in place. Support from governmental sectors, from the Chamber of Commerce, from various organized communities, from organized labor. There was just a tremendous amount of support to keep the ban in place. So what we're doing is we're revisiting that. What's changed is the fact that it was asked me to take a look at this once again and to consider it. And so that's why we're doing these. We want to do these studies with Caltrans, should they get the funding, and it's my hope they will get the funding, and with the Air District. So we have to do this in order to be fair to everyone. No conclusions have been made just yet, but we do need to look into this. And as it was pointed out, there will be a robust community engagement process as we continue this journey over the next few years. So what I'd like to do now is have Jack Broadbent. He will be speaking, or have his staff speak, from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in reference to the health risk assessment study that the Air District will be undertaking. So Jack.
So let's see here. So Director Miley, good evening. And if somebody wants to allow me, the host wants to allow my video. Apparently it says the host turned off my video. So I don't know if Austin can do that, but thank you, Director Miley, and good evening to everyone, including members of the Life Academy and the public officials present here tonight, and members of the public taking time away from their evening to attend this important meeting, town hall meeting tonight. There you go. My name is Jack Broadbent. I serve as the executive officer for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. You can think of us as the local air pollution control agency for the 9-county region of the Bay Area. And I wanted to just take a moment to talk about the role of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in this conversation and the study of the changes in air pollution impacts that would be expected by opening up 580 to truck traffic. This next presentation will be jointly presented by my staff and by our community partners who worked on developing a plan to reduce air pollution in the West Oakland community, a community that's very much still impacted by truck traffic. What you'll hear is that the Air District is ready and willing to work on this as part of our work in the West and East Oakland communities. You'll hear about our efforts in relation to the state regulation AB 617 program. We plan to coordinate our efforts in implementing this effort, and it's this AB 617 requirements, with undertaking an evaluation of changes in air pollution exposure by allowing trucks on I-580. The Bay Area Air District is committed and has been committed to reducing air pollution in overburdened communities for many decades. And going forward, we're committed to assisting with both the technical evaluation and with the public engagement on this I-580 study. I also wanted to highlight the issues in our minds in terms of protecting the Oakland communities. It's a good first step, but it's broader than just allowing trucks on the I-580, but really we're looking at and developing solutions and implementing solutions holistically for the Oakland communities. We look forward to this conversation, and I want to pass it on to Dr. Phil Martine. That's with the Air District staff. I'm going to look to see if I can see Phil, if you can come on.
I'm on, Jack.
Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Jack, and good evening, everyone. As Jack said, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has been working for decades to improve air quality in some of the Bay Area's most overburdened communities. And a 2017 state law that Jack referred to, it's Assembly Bill 617, has really allowed us, our agency, to expand our efforts in this regard. And I'll start off with just a very brief overview on our work on AB 17, specifically because there's a connection between that program and the Air District's involvement in the 580 study. So AB 617 is intended to reduce harmful impacts from air pollution in parts of the state where pollution is higher and where communities have greater health impacts. And these areas of the state are mostly low income and mostly communities of color. Next slide. And in the Bay Area Air District is right now actively working in 2 AB 617 communities. These are the designated communities shown in the yellow. West Oakland was the first community in the state to develop an action plan to reduce air pollution through AB 617. And you'll hear tonight from some of our community partners later in this presentation. We're also working in North Richmond, Richmond, San Pablo, up in Contra Costa on a plan. And next up is East Oakland. It's in the blue color circle. We're expecting to start work there in the first quarter of next year. And we plan to coordinate the development of an East Oakland emission reduction plan through AB 617 with the development of the I-580 truck study that we're discussing tonight. And beyond East Oakland, there are several key communities throughout the Bay Area shown in green. And we're looking forward to working with them on developing and implementing air quality improvement plans in the future. But it's our work in East Oakland and West Oakland that will really be the nexus for our I-580 evaluations. Slide. So as I mentioned, the West Oakland Action Plan was the very first AB 617 emission reduction plan in the state, and it outlines almost 90 strategies for improving air quality and health. And now the Bay Area Air District is directly responsible for controlling emissions of stationary source pollution, like industrial sources and commercial establishments. But this plan also addresses mobile sources like cars and trucks, and it addresses land use patterns, which are largely determined by local cities and counties. And one of the land use strategies that this study identifies is to examine the changes in air quality impacts if commercial trucks, heavy trucks, were to be allowed on I-580. So the Air District's plan is in collaboration with Caltrans, with the county, the city, but also with the community engagement and in coordination with the West Oakland action plan to move forward. And also very much as we'll start this work as we develop the East Oakland emission reduction plan. Now, because the technical analysis we're planning for the 580 study, again, in partnership with others, will be like what we did in some ways to the West Oakland plan, I'll just briefly describe what we did in West Oakland. Next slide. So to support the West Oakland plan, the Air District conducted a very detailed air pollution study, and that study included estimates of fine particulate matter emissions and also emissions of toxic air contaminants in the year 2017 for thousands of individual emission sources. And here, I'll highlight that we developed air pollution emission estimates for cars and trucks on each highway link and on each surface street in West Oakland. And these are the black, the dark lines, and the gray lines on this map. We also estimated emission sources related to the Port of Oakland, for rail, for truck businesses, and industrial and commercial facilities. And then for each source of emissions, we ran an air quality dispersion model to predict how the pollutants are transported and dispersed within the community. Next slide. This map shows the results of that hyperlocal block by block modeling that the Air District conducted in partnership with our community partners in West Oakland, again for the year 2017. In this case, we're looking at cancer risk contributed by sources of toxic air pollutants in West Oakland. And risk levels here are shown as the brownish shading on the map, and the darker areas are worse. So most of the risk that you see on this map is contributed by source of diesel exhaust and the particles in that exhaust. And I want to point out just a couple things. And the first is that the closer you are to the pollution sources, the higher the risk levels. So down near 3rd Street at the bottom of the map, the locally contributed risk is more than 3 times what it is up near the Clawson neighborhood in the northwest part of the community. A second, because we modeled each source separately for any given location, we can say what sources are contributing most. So the colored pie charts here are showing the contributions. And for example, near 3rd Street, you can see that the larger contributions are from port and rail, the dark and light blue colors in the pie chart. So finally, I'll just reiterate that this result was for 2017, but part of the study was looking ahead to predict conditions 5 years out and 10 years out. Next slide. And the good news is that trucks are getting much cleaner. And this figure is from information generated by California's model for emissions from cars and trucks. And the green line at the top of the chart shows the miles traveled in Alameda County by heavy trucks and buses. And it's saying that we expect the miles driven by these trucks to continue to go up. But because of the state regulations on truck and bus emissions, the requirements for stricter controls, emissions have actually come down. And the bottom, and the red line at the bottom is showing the amount of diesel particulate matter or diesel exhaust. And by this estimate, since 2010, the amount of diesel from these trucks and buses has come down by about 80%. So while the truck exhaust is less, even though we have more traffic, we do expect increases in brake and tire wear emissions and road dust that is kicked up by these vehicles. So our air quality assessment will account for this and determine what the net changes in impacts will be. Next slide. So again, we're hoping to work in partnership with Caltrans and others on the traffic study. What the Air District expects to provide, we can already provide some base information. We have information now to evaluate impacts from current conditions with the truck ban in place. For example, we know what the traffic activity is, and we know what the roadway network looks like. And we have population information from the 2020 census. So we know who is exposed by race, by ethnicity in different census tracts. And we can look at what the current risk levels are near local freeways and surface streets. Next slide. So, but to estimate the changes in exposure, if the ban were reversed, if trucks were allowed, we will need additional information. And that's what we're hoping to get from the partnership with Caltrans. We need to know what the changes in truck activity patterns will be, and not only on the freeways, but also on the local surface streets, because the local surface streets may be also important in determining how much pollution people are exposed to. So again, we're going to rely on the travel demand type traffic study that Caltrans is proposing. So I'm going to stop there in the Air District part, and I'm going to pass now to Fern Unatornwarangun, and Fern is a senior air quality policy manager with the Environmental Defense Fund, and she's going to talk about an air pollution measurement study that was conducted of the two freeways. Thank you, Fern.
Thank you, Phil. I hope people can hear me. I'll just take a few minutes to share some results from an air pollution study that Environmental Defense Fund conducted alongside a number of partners that went back to 2015, 2016 or so. This was a partnership with Google Earth Outreach, as well as West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, whom you'll hear from in a moment, and among other partners. The aim of the study was to measure air pollution at the street level with the hope of generating detailed maps that will show how air pollution change across parts of Oakland. And what we did here was we equipped 2 Google Street View cars with research grade air pollution monitors to measure several pollutants, including black carbon and nitrogen oxides. And we focused on these pollutants because they're known to be harmful to human health. And they also serve as a good proxy for diesel emissions, which has been a concern for several communities in Oakland for many years. Not only that they are a proxy for tailpipe emissions, though, they're also a good measure for other pollutants from tire and brake wear. So we collected the air pollution data along the stretch of 580 and 880 that run along the whole length of the city. And the Street View cars drove all the roads and highway segments repeatedly over the course of more than a year to ensure that we got a really good data sample. We really ended up with a large amount of data. And this slide really shows you the comparison between average air pollution levels on the 580 versus the 880. For each graph, the red line shows pollution levels on the 880, and the purple line represents pollution levels on the 580. And you'll see that pollution on the 880 is consistently higher than on the 580 along the whole 25-kilometer stretch that we measured. And our data shows that on average, black carbon levels along the 880 were roughly 80% higher than levels along the 580. And for NO2, the bottom graph, the levels were more than twice higher on the 880 compared to the levels on the 580. And then the differences can also be bigger in some places. For example, you'll see a peak on the 880, excuse me, around the 10-kilometer mark around Jingletown. And you can see some of those wider gaps between the two highways on the graph. With that, I will pass along to Ms. Margaret Gordon from the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project.
Good afternoon. I'm Ms. Margaret Gordon. I'm a founder and co-director of the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project. We are a local-based nonprofit that has made air, water, and soil issue a target to reduce health impacts for the West Oakland community. And as you see on the slide, there's a lot of stuff. And I'm gonna step way back because no one has talked about the original development of redlining going back into the 50s. And that was part of segregation from one community to the other community to be able to not endure the same type of lifestyle that that shouldn't have happened to anybody. So on one side of Oakland, there was a different lifestyle and health and prosperity compared to the other side. So when an 880 was being designed, nobody was talking about equity as a way to look at how pollution has impacted one community and not the other community, and that's health-wise. And one of the things that is missing here tonight is as a root cause of all this is looking at the Port of Oakland. And that going forward, we need the residents along 580 to be more supporting of the reduction of the emissions that's been happening to West Oakland for over the last 80 years. And that even with all these new technologies that's supposed to happen, it's not happening at the same level that it should be, to say that we are healthier now than with the new technology that we have not. So even, and I think more clarification, the Port of Oakland has not developed the infrastructure for having electrification for every vehicle activity that that's to move goods at the Port of Oakland. So clearly there is an imbalance here based on where people are placed. And also, just most recently with the forest fires, spare the air days, the port is increasing its ability to bring in larger ships. There's still there's going to be a significant impact to this community. And what we need is, how do we have this balancing act? So we have the issue of equity finally after all these years. Finding through the Federal Highway Department over the years was also, and those who at the time are transportation planners did harm this community of West Oakland. Yes, and we do need new partners from the residents of 580 to be more involved and entrenched to support us of West Oakland. Brian, you want to take the next slide?
Sure, thank you. If you'd like me to. I did want to point out that a lot of what we had on that previous slide, folks are talking about, these are key questions, right? It's like, we don't believe that we never want to take, pollution from our neighborhood and send it to someone else's neighborhood. That's a principle of our work. It's a principle of most EJ communities. We don't want to export our pollution. We don't think it's equitable to, let's all share the pain. That doesn't seem right. And it probably isn't a good approach to congestion management, because we're very likely just make more room for more trucks. So if we go to the next slide, these are some of the things that that we think a good plan for air quality and for this particular issue are important, right? We need to better understand the kinds of data that we showed earlier, proximity and exposure to sources of emissions. This is a key thing that we have begun to do in our organization. I think we're leaders in this work here in Oakland, is looking at this called high resolution ground level data, where we're looking at every block and seeing how surrounding pollutants affect people block by block. And traffic is a huge effect for everyone that lives, downwind of a freeway or within about 600 meters of a freeway. These are incredibly powerful and toxic constructions that we've built for ourselves so we can get around a little faster. This kind of work will require an integrated agency approach. We're going to have municipal governments and Caltrans and local transportation planners, traffic planners. Someone asked in the chat, why is there a big spike in pollution at Jingletown? I don't have the map in front of me, but I suspect it's one of those places where we've got 2 or 3 merge lanes coming in and everything slows down and people are barely creeping along. And when cars are creeping along and trucks are idling in traffic, you have big local spikes of pollution there. We used to think pollution was just, ambient. It's the same everywhere. But we've learned in the past decade that it can be highly localized and we can have very high concentrations of black carbon and nitrogen oxides in very highly localized positions. So we have to really look at how these roadways are functioning for us and how they're not functioning very well, and look at all those components. This reanalysis of truck routes and logistics is a key factor. As Ms. Margaret talked about, there are hundreds of trucks driving back and forth empty, not carrying cargo, to places like San Leandro and Vallejo because they don't have any place nearby to park or to hold containers that they're required to hold on to overnight or for days at a time right now. And so they take them to truck yards in these distant cities. So there's thousands of miles being driven every month, not for any real business purpose, except to go to a parking lot and hold stuff until they can do something else with it. Of course, sooner or later, we have to get to communicating with the industry. We have to help them better understand where they should be going. We need to keep them off our local streets, especially these heavy duty trucks. And we need to accelerate the process of electrification of the freight industry, like we need to accelerate the process of electrification of all the fuel industries, because it is not the truck driver, it is not even the truck, it's the fuel that's available for trucks, for cars, in all these cases. So the real opportunity here, we think, is for folks that may not think they're allies, folks in the hills, to ally themselves with communities in the flatlands. We all have to be working together for a common goal of eliminating this kind of pollution, rather than thinking in terms of, well, can I get somebody over there to breathe some of it so I don't have to? That ultimately is the best solution to this problem. I'll pass it back to whoever's in charge. Is this my slide too? So the next steps, I think you've heard. We need to conduct these studies. Somebody's talked about where will the money come from. Well, there's a lot of money moving around the government right now for things like transportation improvements. I think we all need to be pushing all of our elected officials to get us some of those dollars so that we can make a good choice here. And we can use this time, we can use this subject to broaden the alliance between all of Oakland, because we're all affected eventually by diesel emissions, because quite frankly, we've got a port and we've got a rail lines and we've got freeways, and they're all upwind from most of our communities. And so it's all blowing towards us. Reducing the emissions from trucks is not just an issue for people who live next to the port, it's for everybody. And we really need all of our neighborhoods to join together to advocate. So thank you.
So are we finished with the Air District's presentation?
Yes, that's it for us, Supervisor Miley.
Okay, so I think we've got a couple, the teacher and another student from Life Academy that want to speak, and then we're going to go to the mayors.
We are passing it over to Patrick. Patrick, if you could unmute.
Yes. First, thank you to Michelle, Angel, Sophia, and Belinda, and the remarkable 6th, now 7th graders at Life Academy for your willingness to observe phenomenon, analyze data, think critically, generate solutions, and for speaking with the moral clarity that all the adults in this room should aspire to emulate. I would like to thank Laura Clivens for recognizing the wisdom of our young scholars and for investigating this discriminatory ban for KQED's Bay Curious podcast. It's a definitive accounting of how we arrived at this moment, and a story I hope all you on the call have listened to in order to arrive fully informed to today's town hall. Finally, thank you, Supervisor Miley, for creating this space to dialogue and for uplifting the voices of those all too often discounted or silenced altogether. I'm sure there are many different opinions in this room, and that's fine. This is a complicated issue, and reasonable minds may disagree on how best to solve this crisis in public safety. I think it's important that we work from a shared set of incontrovertible facts, and I'll only share 2. Fact 1, the I-580 truck ban is a discriminatory policy. This is the only interstate truck ban in all of California and one of the only in the nation. This ban has nothing to do with traffic safety. Caltrans confirmed that I-580 is safe for all vehicles. Fact 2, this ban causes a disparate impact. This policy funnels all diesel burning semi-trucks through densely populated BIPOC communities where my students live, emitting toxic pollution. Black carbon rates along I-880 are 80% higher than along I-580. These particles are so small, they enter the bloodstream, cause heart disease, cancers, and even prevent young people's lungs from fully developing. This is a textbook example of structural racism. A decision that's on its face may seem race neutral, not fueled by racial animosity, but downstream has profound racial impacts and effects. Now the question is what to do about it. Studies are important, but they won't save lives. I hope we have the courage to make tangible improvements to the air entering our kids' lungs. Let's invest in their public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Is there another student? Well, I guess Patrick's the teacher. Was there another student, Austin, who's going to speak?
I believe Michelle.
Hopefully you can hear me well.
Yes.
Okay, let's start. My name is Michelle Perez Mendoza, and I live in Oakland. I am an OESD student at Life Academy for Health and Bioscience. I care about people's well-being and health. This is unacceptable. It's so bad for people to live in a place where lots of trucks pass by. Lots of people die young from asthma attacks just from the pollution, from different diseases such as cancer, strokes, from all of that. And it's really harmful to them. Gases like black carbon are also really bad for them. Just because other people have more money doesn't mean they are more important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I want to thank Patrick and the students from Life Academy for speaking. And as I said before, I promoted them to speak mainly because they're the ones who brought this issue to my attention recently within the last year. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to speak to their reasons for raising this with me. And as a couple of speakers pointed out, once again, we're not trying to pit one community against another. What we're trying to do is come up with a mutual way of addressing this problem of air quality and how it affects our communities overall. So I'm really happy this evening. We have both Mayor Schaaf and Mayor Cutter joining us from the two respective cities, Oakland and San Leandro. And I know I've worked with Mayor Schaaf many, many years before she became a mayor, when she was on the city council and back on the days when I was on the city council. So Mayor Schaaf knows a lot, and I'm going to give the floor to Mayor Schaaf at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Miley, for convening this really important town hall. And I also just want to really just tell the students how powerful and wise you are. Thank you for your inquiry. Thank you for challenging the way things have been. Thank you for demanding that the public structures that touch all of our lives in so many ways just don't take things for granted and continue to ask the hard questions, not just about people's intentions, but what the actual impacts are. I have to also just say how really honored we are in the mayor's office in Oakland to have your former teacher, Patrick Messack, now working in the mayor's office to close the digital divide in Oakland. So if you've heard about Oakland Undivided, Patrick is really the powerhouse behind that initiative. So just so proud and honored that Patrick, you've brought your wisdom, compassion, and care into the mayor's office. And trust me, students, he talks about you all the time. This is a moment for us to ask these hard questions and to not just compare what is happening in different neighborhoods, but to ask ourselves why health impacts are happening to anybody. I really want to raise up this issue of racial equity. In Oakland, we are so honored to have a Department of Racial Equity that does the type of analysis that these students did to really try and quantify the disparities in impacts of the different policies that the public has brought. And now is our moment to really study those harder. And I very much support the proposed actions from the Air Quality District and the other governmental agencies to really re-examine this policy. And let us look at how all the different sources, not just the freeways, of how we are really injuring the health of our beloved children, our most vulnerable, particularly through air quality. I know you heard earlier from Miss Margaret Gordon and Brian Beveridge. And again, let us lift up and be proud of the incredible community-driven work that West Oakland has done to create their own path, their own vision for addressing air pollution. And obviously trucks are a big piece of that. I know somebody commented in the chat about the Port of Oakland. I worked at the Port of Oakland during the years when it actually came up with an air quality plan, and Miss Margaret Gordon was the co-chair of that effort, and also was a port commissioner at that time. But we have to do more and to start understanding how things like different choices we make, where we order our goods from, what kind of food we purchase, how much food we waste, and what we do with that wasted food. All of these choices that each of us makes every day is impacting air quality, and it's impacting health, and it's impacting the future of our planet. And so just, I really want to thank everyone for convening tonight. I am here to listen. I'm here to support the voice of the community and moving forward and asking the tough questions and getting changes, getting actions that are going to lead to a sustainable future for our planet and a much, much healthier community that does not see the types of health disparities that have been so glaringly and horrifically present for so long. So thank you, everyone, and I am here to listen and take action alongside you.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf. And I neglected to mention that Mayor Schaaf is also a member of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission as well. So she's a commissioner along with myself. And now I'd like to introduce Mayor Cutter. Mayor Cutter actually serves on the County Transportation Commission with me. She's the chair of the Transportation Commission for the county. And Mayor Cutter is also on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board with me as well. So Mayor Cutter, the floor is yours. You're still muted, Mayor.
Yes,
Go.
I know, I'm trying. I didn't see the little box, so thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Miley. I know that this has been talked about for quite a while. I'm also really here to listen, as we all are. Thank you to the students of the Life Academy. You know, we sometimes in government, we have this idea that we're planning for the future, but we need to listen to who is going to be the future. And it's really important, as Mayor Shaft has said, and the supervisor, that we listen to your voices. So I'm really happy about that. I'm looking at, you know, San Leandro has a very vested interest in this. We have both 880 and 580 that runs right through our city. So, you know, and 238. So we're kind of all surrounded by this and the port on our northern borders. And in fact, working with BACMA to get that little pocket of San Leandro that has probably worse pollution than most of East Oakland included in that section, because as we all know, pollution has no boundaries. I really listened and am heartened to hear the message by you know, Miss Margaret and Brian Beveridge about environmental justice and how we go about you know, the change that we need to actually bring change, not, you know, spread the harm around, but how are we going to actually make that change? And it's through agencies like BACMA, Caltrans putting their money, the county bringing their money, both cities working together to try to figure out how we can really solve the problem, not spread it out, but really solve the problem. Is that electric trucks? Is it biofuel? What are those things that we can do and make sure that we're looking towards the future to do it? So I'm really excited to be here. I'm want to really listen. And I know there's going to be some pitting of neighborhoods, and anytime change is hard, and anytime you get neighbors without explaining all of the ramifications and all of the reasons and why you're doing things, sometimes people are quick to make a decision. But by doing these studies, we're trying to get the information we need first, and then slowly but surely go about making the right decisions. And I think that that's the part where we're at. And I thank Supervisor Miley for bringing that up and reminding us of that. And so with that, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cutter. I would just once again reiterate to folks that when Caltrans gets the funding, because I'm confident they will, they'll be doing a study along with the Air District. We don't expect the results of the study to be completed until probably fiscal year 2023. And there'll be a robust community engagement effort along the way. And even after the study is completed, we'll see what the findings and recommendations are. And once again, the decision is not in the hands of Mayor Schaaf, Mayor Cutter, Supervisor Miley. The decision ultimately will be in the hands of the state legislature, whether to lift the ban or not. As somebody pointed out, the ban is permanent, but the legislature can always repeal that law. So but we want to see how we can come up with a win-win here, as opposed to something that is antagonistic towards any one community. So I think at this time, Austin, from my staff, has looked at a lot of the questions that have come up in the chat. He's categorized them, and we're going to try to respond to some of those questions before we open it up to questions, live questions from all of you this evening.
Thank you, Supervisor. Again, my name is Austin Bruckner. I work for Supervisor Miley. The supervisor asked that I reiterate that we have the chat function open this evening. Attendees, you will notice that you are able to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to indicate if you have questions. You will not see questions from other panelists. As earlier stated in the meeting, Supervisor Miley's office will be taking a list of those questions and trying as best we can to get out a written document that best addresses the points made. As of 7:40, we had about 200 different questions, comments, feedback, suggestions that were put into the chat. And we are trying our best to summarize those into just a couple of questions. The first kind of overall question there's a great focus in the interest of the history of the 580 and 880 corridor, including 880 as an industrial corridor. There are a number of comments that speak to issues of equity, racial segregation, and there's also numerous questions about agreements made with Mills College and other surrounding areas. Again, speaking to the overall history of 580 and 880, including 880 as an industrial corridor, issues of equity, racial segregation, and then there were numerous comments about an agreement with Mills College. So we'll open that up to our panelists if anyone has anything that they would like to say that addresses those points.
Yeah, I would just initially state that, Ms. Margaret Gordon pointed it out, as well as some of our other speakers, that there was a history of redlining, and that I think it's been something that, once again, I know when I was on the city council back in the 1990s, when we were looking at this issue, I wasn't even thinking about equity at that point in time, but equity in terms of health, racial equity, things of that nature, have become more of a contemporary concern. As was pointed out, even with the state legislature, with the Assembly Bill 617, in terms of overburdened communities, we have a responsibility to take a look at these situations. But once again, we don't want to displace problems and move them to another community. We want to see how we can resolve these problems. And I do feel that it's unfortunate that along the 880 corridor, communities have been challenged with, manufacturing industry, a lot of vehicular traffic. All of those add to the pollution and the air quality. So that is a fact of life, and we can't escape that fact of life. But now we're trying to see how we can redress that. I don't know if any other panelists want to take a stab at it. And I'm not familiar with any agreements with Mills College, but I'm sure as we get further into this, we'll be able to unearth if there are any, legal agreements or anything of that nature. Anybody else have any comments they want to make on this as a panelist? Okay, not seeing anyone. Austin, what's the next question?
Okay, there were the next kind of group of questions focuses on trucks themselves. Numerous questions about the electrification of trucks, recommendations to encourage different kinds of transit, including rail, high-speed rail, several comments about the use of toll lanes, both in favor and in opposition, and then numerous questions regarding the regulation and enforcement of the existing trucks.
Okay, so in terms of trucks and cleaner trucks, does anybody from the Air District want to speak to that?
I'll take a shot at that. My name is Greg Nutt. I'm the Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer for Policy at the Air District. And actually, I think Ms. Margaret and Brian are probably just as attuned, if not more, than the folks at the Air District on this question. We are seeing aggressive regulation in trucks. We do expect the diesel particulate matter from trucks to drop down dramatically over the next few years. That's something that Phil showed in his slides. There are a number of projects underway now to improve the number of trucks that are electrified at the Port of Oakland. Brian Beveridge in the chat was referencing a project right now to have more hydrogen trucks put in place in the port. And so this technology is proceeding. There are some barriers, though, in terms of the expense associated with bringing in the infrastructure and the expense to the truckers themselves, because these are mostly independent truckers, to make that investment. So that's why it's really important to have as much support as possible to provide the funding to make this transition happen as quickly as possible.
Okay.
I could offer, there are both electric and hydrogen fuel cell heavy duty tractors in the marketplace now. Almost every truck manufacturer is producing an electric truck, In fact, Hyundai announced that they were going to phase out. Hyundai Heavy Industries makes these hydrogen trucks, and they're going to phase out basically fossil fuel equipment by 2028. So it really comes down to infrastructure, as Greg Nudd was saying. We have to rethink this industry. Unfortunately, the trucker and the truck is not considered a high value land use. But, if we're going to put in charging facilities for electric vehicles, we're going to have to pick land and put it there. It's very difficult to make that a portable facility. So I think these are some of the things we need to be thinking about when we're looking at how do we get a bunch of that infrastructure money from Washington and all these places. We've got to think as a city and as a region about the implications of this shift away from diesel fuel and these liquid fuels. We've had 100 years to figure out where to put gas stations and all these things and how that industry works. But now we have to rethink how it's going to work for us when things are operated on electricity and maybe hydrogen and maybe other types of fuels. We are there. We are very close. I didn't think I would see it in my lifetime, but we are very close. The pressure is on. Pressure is on the policymakers. The pressure is on the regulators, and the pressure is on the equipment owners. And that is another complex set of stakeholders who have to figure out how to work together to get to a goal we have. But everyone in this call has to have this in the back of their minds. We all have to be pushing. There is almost no way to go fast enough to conquer this problem, because as someone said in the chat, and I think people have said here, kids are getting asthma every day. New cases of new cases of asthma in children under 5 are happening every day because of transportation emissions. Older people are having strokes and heart attacks, every day from transportation emissions. So there's no room to wait. Studies help us, but we already know the problem, and we have to keep moving. We have to push harder and harder every day.
Okay, thank you. Austin, what's the next question? Because I know I'm seeing a lot of questions pop up in the chat. So I want to
Yes, there are a lot of questions. There's also a number of folks pointing out that they have their hand raised. As a reminder, the supervisor has asked that we start kind of with our chat to really summarize as best we can the overall questions, and then we will be moving to folks with their hand raised, just to point that out. The next question really has to do with the individual studies. Will the studies involve Highway 13? As well as what efforts would be made for community engagement. And then there are questions about various special interest groups and the role, if any, that they would play in those studies.
So if the staff from Caltrans and the Air District could talk about the studies and also the timeline associated with the studies.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor, for the question. And yes, there's going to be numerous studies that is associated with this effort. So the feasibility study is going to include a lot of the technical studies that have to do with air noise, traffic patterns in the area. And I saw a number of questions regarding State Route 13. And if we're going to be considering traffic around the area, we need to consider it holistically. So we're going to be looking at the entire network surrounding the 580 and the 880. So our subject matter experts are really the ones that are going to be digging deeper into these studies and working with the Air Quality District and working with other entities that have studies that are ongoing in the area is going to be a focal part of our discussion as we are developing these studies. Regarding the questions about community engagement, it's something that we definitely have a lot of interest in engaging the community. When we say engagement, we really mean engagement where we come in and not just do outreach, but rather have listening sessions to address concerns and to evaluate all the different options. inviting the right community members along both corridors. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the city of San Leandro, the city of Oakland, and the unincorporated areas, and having community members and other regional and county members and city officials also provide their input as part of that engagement is going to be something that we are going to focus on.
And in terms of the time frame, should the funding be approved, which I'm really sincerely want it to be approved, you don't anticipate the study starting until this coming fiscal year in July, and it'll take about a year?
Correct, Supervisor. So what we are aiming for is the next fiscal year funding, which starts in 2022. If we're able to secure the funding by then, and we're really hopeful, as you said, I think this is going to be a very high priority for us. If we're able to secure the funding at that time, we are going to be engaging in putting out proposals, requests for proposals. That usually takes a couple of months or so before we're able to award that study to somebody. But we're looking at starting the actual study early 2023. And that usually takes between a year and 18 months to conclude, depending on how extensive some of the technical studies also are going to be. And the community engagement component, of course, is a big part of that.
Yes. Okay. Air District staff?
Supervisor Miley, as we conduct this effort, the engagement with the community is going to be paramount. It's part of how we do business. And so we'll be working with our local community partners in defining just how to conduct that outreach. I don't know if Greg or Phil want to add to my remarks, but as you know, Supervisor Miley, that's part of how we do business now.
And the time frame for the Air District's analysis?
Well, it's first a function of the traffic pattern, the traffic study that Caltrans is discussing, and so that's going to be the foundation for our work. Phil, do you want to? Because you need that information.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that, Jack. So we're, as I mentioned, the first quarter of next year, we'll sort of start laying the groundwork and developing a community partnership in East Oakland to kind of form a steering committee. The technical work, I feel like for the base case study, like the existing conditions, will probably take us about a year after that starts. But then depending on the Caltrans study to understand the differences in traffic patterns, if the 580 were to open up, to me, that's the tricky part of this and the part that we are going to have to rely on others to provide that information. But once we get that, it won't take us too long. We're set up to do those types of analyses. So for us, that's a matter of months, not years.
I think Margaret Gordon wanted to respond as well. Margaret, are you there?
Margaret, if you could unmute.
Simultaneously, as you are looking at air quality on these corridors, of 580 and 880, simultaneously we should be doing testing of studying air quality of the indoor simultaneously. And that's one of the missing links that has not been supported in any of these studies that we have done simultaneously. We have lots of air sensors. We have used a lot of air sensors. We have had a lot of air monitors. We had the Google car, but nothing indoors. And that's the elephant in the room. How simultaneously this study would include indoor studying as well as outdoor study.
Okay, thank you. And I think there's one more grouping of questions, Austin.
That is correct. And this particular question has to do with any potential changes to the ban and any potential related impacts. A phrase that was thrown around a couple times was build a road and they will come. so the question specifically was regarding, should any changes occur? This idea that we're spreading pollution along the 580 corridor. There was also a discussion regarding sound issues, congestion issues, safety hazards for cars and cyclists, kind of an overall impact to the 580 corridor. There's also questions, and I apologize, this is a loaded question, regarding how many trucks we're referring to. So again, the question is regarding the ban, if any changes occur, and the related impact, including sound issues, congestion, safety hazards, how many trucks are we talking, etc.
I think all that will be taken up in the study, but I'll see if Caltrans and the Air District have any comments on that, on that universe of questions.
And Supervisor, this is Dina again from Caltrans. I would say that, definitely a big focus of the study is going to be the safety along the corridors, and what the additional traffic and additional truckloads on the 580 would, how it would impact safety, if any impact. So I did see a few comments in the chat regarding that. This is going to be thoroughly evaluated by our traffic management teams, and making sure that the hotspot locations within the 580 will be thoroughly studied to ensure that safety is definitely taken into consideration as we move forward with any recommendations from the final study.
Any comments from the Air District?
Just to echo Phil's comments earlier, we're really, it's essential to have that traffic engineering study done if the air quality and health study is going to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah, and quite frankly, there might be things that come out of the study that show that maybe there needs to be more buffers along the 880 corridor. I think the city will be doing a general plan update, and there might be a need for more buffers along the 880 corridor between industry, freeways, and neighborhoods. Maybe there might be more practical things. I know, like in West Oakland, the planting of trees and environmental upgrades, as well as maybe having windows double pane. But I mean, that doesn't deal with all the issues. But I mean, I don't want to predetermine what's going to come out of the studies, but there could be a lot of stuff that comes out of this that I think would be very germane to our considerations. So what I'd like to do now is, if there's no other comments from any of the panelists, I want to open up it to the hands that are raised. I think Austin will call on people, and we'll just take the hands that are raised and try to be as responsive as possible.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. Again, this was covered in the beginning of the meeting, but for those that joined, if you move your mouse down to the bottom of your screen, you should see a raise your hand option. Depending on what version of Zoom you have, it may say reactions. It may have the 3 dots. And you should be able to use that to physically raise your hand. We will start with folks that were able to navigate that process. If you are not able to navigate that, we will then go to folks that can communicate in the chat that they would like to speak, but were unable to raise their hand. We will go ahead and we're going to allow about a minute for folks to speak. And Amelia Marshall, you are our first person.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amelia. I am a resident of the Laurel District. We live about 6 blocks downwind from 580. We hear 580, we smell 580. There's an old saying I'm sure you've heard, 2 wrongs don't make a right. The young people from the Life Academy, Miss Gordon, and other residents of the 880 corridor are completely right to call out the officials for environmental racism of the location of 880. But if you put trucks on 580, it's not going to appreciably improve things on the 880 corridor, and we will be inhaling those particulates and those toxic fumes. We will be, the primary beneficiary of putting trucks on 580 would be the trucking industry. I think when you finish your expensive studies, what you'll see is the particulates and the toxins will stack up against the hills and then drop down on our neighborhood in East Oakland. I would like very much to see this plan scuttled rather, because it's a really bad idea. And we want to preserve the legacy of Judge John Sutter, who was the environmentalist who fought to keep some of our city free and clear of the malign influences of trucking. With that, I'll thank you for your attention to these comments.
Our next speaker is Douglas Spalding.
And actually, I was on mute, so I just wanted to say, Judge, thank you for Amelia, because Judge Sutter was a great person, a great jurist, and a great elected official. I was on mute, so he didn't hear me. Okay, go ahead, Douglas.
Good evening, Supervisor, experts, and activists. I'm ambivalent about the I-580 truck ban. I'm someone who, I'm a little bit older than I-580. I've certainly benefited from my whole life, and I have to say it just is environmentally racist. But perhaps instead of doing away with the I-580 ban, we should think about the I-880 ban. I find myself very much aligned with the comments of Brian Beveridge, and I think the studies are important. I think there's an urgency to this matter, and I hope this is the beginning of some organizing. Well, obviously organizing has been going on, and I will continue to look to the residents of West Oakland and the students of Life Academy for leadership in that regard. But I think really the enemy here is diesel and pollution, and that's what we should be investing our energies in. Thankfully, the state has legislation, and the transition is supposed to begin in a few years, but the timeline is like 20 years out. I don't think we have that much time. So what are the things that we can do to enforce a ban on combustion engines and getting rid of diesel? It's good news that the particulate matters come down by 80%, but we have much farther to go. Thank you.
Okay, would any of our panelists like to speak to that?
Austin, I just would like to agree with the speaker that I think the main focus should be really about reducing pollution. And this is something that the state is taking an active role in. A lot of the policies that we're seeing coming out of the state right now is really focused on how do we reduce greenhouse gas emission in general and the vehicles miles traveled on our highways, looking at alternative modes of travel and looking really at multimodal modes that allows for transit, allow for freight corridors, for active transportation corridors, and really shifting folks out of their single vehicle usage into a more multimodal transportation network. And I think a lot of the speakers and a lot of the comments that I saw in the chat are right on. I think this is what we need to do, and we need to really be taking a very active role on how are we gonna limit the greenhouse gas emissions and drop that down.
Yeah, Austin, on behalf of the Air District, the staff of the Air District, I would agree completely with the comment. The Air District is very committed to getting rid of diesel particulate out of our air we breathe and out of our lungs. And so we have significant investments being made to be able to transition out of diesel. The district has made a commitment to go diesel-free by 2033, and I would ask that participants visit our website to look at the number of grants and other investments we're making to be able to transition off of diesel and into alternative forms of transportation.
And Supervisor, if I can just chime in, Oakland, California has also joined the diesel-free pledge. So that is an official policy of the city. And as people talk about banning trucks, don't, if you're going to ban trucks, stop shopping on Amazon, stop getting mail. The West Oakland post office is a generator of diesel particulate. And I remember when we did the air quality assessment and health impact assessment of the port back in the day when I worked there, which was a while ago, Jack, but you remember, I was surprised to learn that actually port trucks were not the biggest source of particulate matter. It was actually non-port trucks. So every day we get deliveries, and our businesses depend on deliveries. That restaurant that you eat in, the pub that you get your favorite beer at, there are trucks delivering to all of these entities. And so banning trucks would have a very, very dramatic effect on our economy. What we want to ban is diesel. What we want to ban is pollution. And I want to commend the Air District and the state of California for doing a good combination of both regulation, but also funding to help upgrade the engines so that they aren't polluting, helping to electrify port equipment. And so we just have to be much more aggressive in that combination of incentives and regulation so that we, don't, of course, our first priority is to not kill people. And our second priority would be to not kill jobs. Obviously, life comes first and the environment comes first. But I think the way that you've been doing it has made tremendous progress, which I think it's important for us to acknowledge. And obviously, it has to be more. But I want to focus on that pollutant. Same with whoever keeps on commenting that we can just put all the cargo on trains. Trains don't go all the same places that trucks do. We cannot legislate where goods come from and where they go in the entirety. Now, we've done a lot of things, and the Air District has done a lot of things to try and incentivize the use of rail for goods movement. The use even of barges. We're trying to create a maritime highway. I remember we've talked about. We're always looking for non-truck ways to transport goods, and there's been a lot of progress in incentivizing those less polluting ways. But that is the complexity of the environment that these regulators work in. But I want to acknowledge the work that has been done. Somebody has asked me to stop talking, so I will honor that.
Well, thank you very much, staff.
Supervisor Miley.
I want to co-sign everything that you've already said, because goods movement is fundamental to our society for sure. But I know we have a lot of people who want to speak, so I want to make sure we get to everybody and we can respond to questions as we go along. But thank you.
Supervisor Miley, I didn't get an answer to my question about the study. We need to have understanding. We got to have a simultaneously study. You just cannot measure outdoors, you got to measure indoors. And I need to hear that.
Air District staff, will there be any measurements of indoor impact?
So Ms. Margaret and Director Miley, let us take that suggestion back, because it's a good one, and we would need to incorporate that as part of the study elements. So good, it's a good point.
Okay, let's have the next question or next speaker, please.
Matt Davis.
Hello, I just wanted to first say how heart-wrenching it is to hear, but also very uplifting from the kids of Life Academy and the citizens of West Oakland, the various action groups involved. I don't have much time. My primary concern just is that there's multiple stakeholders involved. My home backs up to 580. We back up to the sound wall. We hear vibrations when trucks who are currently violating the ban go by. We live on the downward portion of 580 West between Park Boulevard and Lakeshore. So my primary concern, I'll say it right here, is can you please, we're in the middle of a pandemic, can we have enough time to meet as citizens? When this happened in the past, there were overflows out into the parking lot. And we need to all come together as Oaklanders to be heard. And it's very hard in chatting and Zooms in order to do a decision like this that will impact so many people. So that's my primary hope.
Yeah, Matt, you've got our commitment to that. And quite frankly, with Zoom, we're actually able to hit more people. But I do anticipate that if the pandemic allows for us to have in-person meetings, we'll be doing both in-person as well as virtual. So yes, for sure.
Yeah, we can hit more people, but I'm not sure that people are as comfortable really getting their hands around all the different issues and communicating. It's effective, but I look forward to a vigorous discourse and everyone finding a way that we can work together on this.
Yes, we will definitely ensure a robust public engagement. You can count on that. Next speaker.
Gina.
Hello, my name's Gina and I'm a homeowner of 2 properties, both of which are walking distance off of the 580 freeway. And I wanted to speak today to voice my support for removing the 580 truck ban. I know that allowing trucks on 580 doesn't have many net positives personally for me as someone that lives off the 580 freeway, but I also recognize that there's a net positive for our larger Oakland community by removing the ban. And as the students at Life Academy spoke about, this ban has demonstrated that it has negatively affected people of color in our community in the form of health issues and years of life lost. As a community, we need to look at the current issues affecting our neighbors and proactively address these issues. And I see removing the 580 truck ban coupled with leaning more into green energy vehicles as an immediate way we can help address the environmental and equity inequality faced by our neighbors living off 880. All of our stakeholders on the call today, I hope that you'll take into account that there are people who live off the 580 freeway who are also in support of removing the truck ban. And I hope that this will encourage you to move to support removing the ban. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
Jose.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, as an OUSD alumni, I'm very happy to hear Life Academy students speak in this forum. I do favor the reverse ban of the legislation. In fact, it should be a reverse for environmental racism. As a resident of Foothills, below, just right off the 580, I feel that this is a very important time in which communities should come together. I used to live I grew up in the East Oakland Flatlands, and I also was impacted by sports asthma and also my nephew with asthma. So I think that I'm very hopeful that communities come together to really see a parallel path between banning and also looking at renewable energy to see if we can get trucks to be electric and so forth. So looking forward to this and follow up on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Billie Jean. Billie Jean.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just want to say that I've lived in Oakland my entire life. I'm in my 60s, and these issues of racial inequality have been going on for over 50 years. I just want the students at Life Academy to know that decades before any of you were born, we raised these issues of pollution, of asthma, bronchitis, lung disease. So this is nothing new. What I really feel is happening is that with the gentrification coming in and white people moving back to the areas that they fled from in the late 50s through the 60s and early 70s, now they're being affected because they're living in the same neighborhoods as we are. And while taking care of this pollution, removing it would be a very good thing, I would hope, okay, that from now on, that when people of color raise these issues, that we are listened to and respected, and it doesn't take 50 years to get things moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Billie Jean, for your comments. Next speaker.
David.
Hi, I live within a baseball throw of the 580 freeway, and I commute on it all day long. What I would like the commission to understand is that 880 by and large is a flat land for diesel trucks. And while we all don't want diesel truck pollution, I think the study clearly shows that Jingletown has an increased amount of diesel particulate that shows. And that is I think, reflective of that geography where diesel trucks are entering the port, off the port, and also merging over a large freeway. People have to understand that 580 has hundreds, if you know, at least 300 to 400 feet of elevation changes. You're going to, if you employ diesel trucks on these roads, you're going to have a massive amount of off particulate gassing going up hills, and then they're going to be using engine braking going down, which creates a massive amount of sound pollution. So just understand that diesel trucks are not a great method of transportation. And I'm coming from a place where I have been developing electric vehicles for over 10 years.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, David, I think, once again, I think the Caltrans study will look at that as well. That will be something that'll be analyzed. So thank you for those comments. Next.
Laura. Laura, if you could unmute. Okay, Laura might be having some technical issues, so Laura will come back to you. Caitlin?
Hi, my name's Caitlin Pacheco. I'm a physician who's had the good luck to work at two of Oakland's excellent hospitals. And I have concerns very specifically about the sound pollution. 580 runs right by our three major hospitals. I don't know if they were built there for that reason, but the sound created by diesel trucks is far, far more than that created by a regular passenger car at much lower speeds. So my concern is that, you know, you'd have to redo the soundproofing in all of these places to be below the WHO recommended decibel level for people to heal from their conditions. I'd also like to know if they're going to consider age as part of the equity study, because there are multiple senior living facilities in this area, and those folks are also very susceptible to these types of pollution. I'd also like to know if we aren't actively looking for funding to reduce the problems around 880 with known mitigators of the effects before looking for funding for more studies that we can kind of predict the results of. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Can anyone from the Air District or Caltrans respond to some of those inquiries that Caitlin just raised? Anyone from the Air District or Caltrans?
Supervisor, I can speak a little bit to what other mitigation measures we can possibly do along the I-80, and it's something that the department is definitely interested in. What can we do to reduce the noise levels and also to improve air quality? One of the things that we're actively looking at is more vegetation, and that has helped in other areas, and it's something that we have interest in. Besides, of course, you know, looking at other alternative fuels like electric vehicles and things like that from a grander perspective. But there's a potential for looking at just mitigation measures in general, whether sound walls or additional vegetation.
Anybody else?
And Supervisor Miley, I can speak to the question as to whether age will be considered in the health study. Yes, it will. The impacts of health pollution vary a great deal depending on the age and the race of the person breathing. And so both of those things will be considered as part of the health impact study.
Okay, thank you. And it's really good because I have, you know, a lot of speakers of raising a lot of good points. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that came in the chat. So I think all of this is very informative for both Caltrans and the Air District as we proceed forward. So I appreciate everybody's comments. So let's go to the next speaker. Did Laura, did she queue up yet?
Laura was a reporter from KQED who indicated her hand was raised in air.
Okay. Who's
Joel?
next?
Hello, how are you?
Very good.
Great. I would respectfully ask that the electeds not respond. You guys should be listening right now. So I know people have questions, but let them public comment their questions, and that way we can get more people heard. And so let's move forward with this process. A lot of this comment is excusing the racist history of Oakland, and it really blows me away. Some folks, even in my own neighborhood, want the flatlands to bear the brunt. I live over by the Diamond, in between the Diamond and the Laurel, and some folks want the flatlands to bear the entire burden of the pollution. You know, yeah, we should move forward with a global green economy, ban diesel, and move towards electrification and expanding public transit and biking, walking options. But the burden now should be shared. It's always been a question of equality, just like Billie Jean said. It's always been a question of who's been heard and whose considerations are being acted upon. It's been racist in the past. Please move forward now to end the racist history and legacy of this ban on trucks on 580.
Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Joel. And I'll try to keep quiet. I know we've got about 25 more speakers in the queue, and we want everyone to be able to speak. So call the next speaker, Austin.
Patrick?
Hello, thank you. My name is Patrick. I'm a resident of Oakland. I grew up in Los Angeles next to the Port of LA in the 80s and directly next to a freeway which carries trucks and containers from the Port of LA. As a kid, I developed asthma, severe asthma, and it got so bad that I eventually had to move from the house that I grew up in. I now live in Oakland in part because we have cleaner air here. And I believe strongly that we need to reduce air pollution in Oakland. Most of the air pollution here is caused by vehicles, cars, and trucks like we're talking about today. I do not support lifting the truck ban on 580. And in fact, I believe the best way to address our air pollution now is to ban trucks from not just 580, but also 880 and 980. Other cities have done exactly this and instead use containers and large deliveries are done using rail and trains, and then small vans and small trucks deliver from the train depots. I strongly support us doing that as well. Thank you.
Jay Moon?
Oh, hi, good evening. Thank you very much. A lot of good ideas out there. And I'm not for having diesel trucks on the 580 at all. I grew up here. I know what it's like to drive that 880. I stay off of that freeway because it scares the heck out of me. The trucks are too intense in your little bitty car, and you got the big trucks there. But I think one of the things that people have to consider too is like when people have lived close by that 880 freeway, as I have as a kid, of my family members, there's 3 of them have autoimmune diseases. Now, I don't know if there's a connection there, but it's kind of a coincidence. And we all lived there as children, close to Jackson Street, and plenty of trucks. We could hear the trucks going by. And so I think, I just like to say, I'm not for the ban, but I am for improving the truck's quality. And I'm hoping that would be a better way to go. And also, I'm still for the rails. I think we could work that out with the railroads as well. We paid for those, so let's use them. Thank you so much.
Don Sifkus?
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for the students for raising this issue. I certainly agree with Mayor Schaaf and with the EJ people, Margaret and Brian, that the problem is diesel. And we might as well bite the bullet and try to solve this problem once and for all by banning the use of large diesel trucks in the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. But you want to be very careful about specifying the technology to take its place. There may be some electric, but there are other options too: ethanol, dimethyl ether, hydrogen. And the best way to do it is to do what the Air Quality Management District did by lowering the particulate emissions from Bay Area catalytic cracking beds and Bay Area refineries last July, but they didn't specify the technology to do it. I think that's what we really should do, and this could serve as a catalyst for ultimately banning the sale of large diesel trucks in the United States, which is where we have to end up. Thank you.
Joe Simpson.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I've heard a very well-educated, well-spoken comments about 580. I live a block away from Mills College. I think the racing going around MacArthur is probably worse than the 580 traffic. But specifically, what I would like to talk about is the rising water issue. And when you look at the projected flood areas, large portions of 880 are simply going to be underwater. And I haven't heard anything about any kind of planning for these rising waters. The other thing that just boggles my mind is why all this construction, condos that are being built in huge quantities west of 880, and we talk about property being underwater. Well, guess what? Before these people get their mortgages paid off, their garages are going to be underwater. And so all the traffic on 880 will probably be most likely be coming through 580 at that time. Thank you.
Brett.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brett. I live in San Leandro, right by the Oakland border. And I want to thank everybody for all the really insightful comments and such a great conversation to hear that the community can have this kind of discussion. I had a specific question or request, and that's the study by Caltrans should account for how performance of public transportation that uses 580 would be affected by the change. I commute via AC Transit, Transbay buses on 580, and I walk to the bus stop and take the bus into San Francisco. I don't take BART because it's difficult to get there from where I live without a car. Adding truck traffic onto 580, as people have mentioned, with steeper grades and more twists and turns, seems like it would really slow these buses down. They don't have a dedicated lane. I agree with everybody that the equity issue needs to be solved. I'm just not sure that allowing trucks onto 580 is going to do that. It seems like it would just increase capacity for more trucks in the region and allow for even more pollution.
Felix. Felix, if you could unmute.
And I want to continue to thank all the speakers for
Here we
their
go.
comments.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes, so I have one comment. I am trying to understand this equity issue, but I do not see how shifting pollution from one demographically diverse area to another demographically diverse area satisfies equity. I think the real problem, or what big problem, is the Port of Oakland. That's what should be addressed. That's where the pollution is coming from, the Port of Oakland, and it's whatever feeds it or goes from it. I think that and the money spent on this study should really be used to improve public transit, which is sorely lacking in the East Bay. Thank you.
Let me just say, and I know I've tried to keep quiet here, the Air District has put a lot of money in, and also the port, to try to address air quality issues out at the port, and that continues. The port's the economic engine for this region. And we're not trying to shift problems from one community to another. I've been very clear on that. We're trying to come up with a win-win. Next speaker.
Elaine? Elaine, if you could unmute. Okay, they might be having some technical issues. We'll come back to you. Marilyn Reynolds.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I have really been enjoying this discussion. First, before I say anything, I want to thank Gina, Jose, Billie Jean, Joe. They have already said what I basically wanted to say. I would just urge the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to please speed up your studies, your solicitation for funding. I live in West Oakland. We are desperately can't breathe over here. It is horrible, the pollution. And we are also impacted by the majority of people who are unhoused. So we are just, dealing with all this racial segregation and dumping of, unwanted things in our neighborhood all the time. Please, please consider the people of West Oakland. I have respiratory problems. I'm a retired school teacher. I've served my city, and I've taught my students. A lot of them have asthma. They had their inhalers that they brought to school every day.
Thank you, Marilyn. Tracy?
Sorry about that. Yes. I was wondering, is there going to be a thorough legal review as well as an environmental review? Because we hear about a pretty serious agreement with Mills College. I don't have personal knowledge of that. But also, if you lift the ban for equity reasons and it results in harm to the people along 580, I can see a huge legal challenge to that, maybe multiple legal challenges. So I was just hoping that as everybody reviews this, that those aspects will be reviewed too. So we don't get derailed by an expensive lawsuit that could be money used for improving the environment.
Gabrielle?
Yes, hi. I just want to say, first of all, I agree with the person who said that this isn't about shifting a problem from one place to another. This is about sharing a burden. This is about, are we one community or are we not one community? And, for everybody who lives near 580 and says, oh, I feel really bad about this, but it's not fair to move this over to me. This is about sharing a burden and coming together as a community. That's the first thing I want to say. And the second thing I want to say is that, I don't want to hear anybody to say we shouldn't do the study. I think the study is really important, and I do hope you get the funding. I hope it gets done as quickly as possible, because for everyone who's saying, I know it's going to happen, we don't need to do the study. Why is everybody so scared to do the study? So that's all. Thank you.
V. It seems that you lowered your hand. You are unmuted. Okay, moving on. Barisha.
Hello, good evening. I am a resident of unincorporated Ashland. Unincorporated means that we have no municipal charter. We're not a city. We have been largely overlooked by many agencies, including Caltrans. I live right on East 14th Street in Ashland. The 238/880 is 2 blocks from my house. The 580 is about 4 blocks from my house. I am against the ban. We are majority people of color, low income. Our health outcomes are worse in East Oakland here. And we're dying over here, have asthma just like everybody else in East Oakland and West Oakland, except we don't have city level government, which is a complete disenfranchisement. And we need to be included with this study as well.
Okay, V, I see you raised your hand again. V, I apologize. Perhaps use the chat. There also is a dial-in number. Up next, we have Matt Turner.
Hi all. I live in unincorporated Alameda County in an SB 1000 community of environmental concern. We're on the edge of 580 and 238. There's a lot of particulate matter here. For those who say share the burden, that's kind of like, there's a dwelling that has an abuser, and we should just share that abuser so that they can abuse everybody. What we need to do is eliminate the abuser, and that's diesel particulates. This county actually has one of the world-leading technology in that Alameda County's AC Transit is a world leader in hydrogen fuel for large vehicles. Their bus fleet is the world's largest hydrogen fuel clean transportation system, and we should really move as quickly as we can to get that into goods transportation so that we can get rid of this source of deadly pollution that's harming our community. Thanks.
Okay, up next we have Sabine.
Yeah, hi. I live right across the street from 580. Literally, I have the vegetation across from me and no housing. When I bought the house, I knew that there was going to be a certain amount of noise. And I bought into that, so to speak. This would increase the noise. That said, at the time, the fact that there was no big rigs was a selling point. And when I asked why there are no big rigs, I was told it was a safety concern. So I'm kind of horrified to find out that there was a whole history there that I was not told. So I came here to actually protest and make sure that the ban is not lifted. Now I'm thinking differently. And I think this is not acceptable the way it is. But we can't just ban trucks. I understand that. We don't have an economy that'll allow for that. We don't have the infrastructure to just switch over to hydrogen or electric. So I'm thinking, can we do something like time limitations or regulations so that the trucks that have the best, or the vehicles that have the lowest particulate matter can freely use the freeways, and those that are high polluters have to at least pay a carbon duty or something.
Thank you. Anne? Anne? Anne, you're unmuted. Okay, Anne, maybe you're having some audio issues. We're going to move on and we'll come back to you. Tom? Tom, you're also unmuted. Okay, Anne and Tom, I apologize. We will come back to you. Michael Freed.
Hi, good evening, Supervisor Miley and everybody who's listening in. This is Michael Freed, resident of unincorporated Cherryland, which is actually Hayward, but called Cherryland. Put a couple of questions in the chat in terms of just the rhetoric that's going on. I'd like some a little clearer and maybe simplistic identification of the area considered Jingletown. I know the meaning of it, but I'd like it to be re-identified so that everybody knows what that means. The other thing that I have for the air quality control management is, where are the monitoring stations in the South and East Bay located that you're going to be doing studies from? As I'm well aware that Marin and Sonoma counties have monitoring stations. I know somebody personally who was a monitor, and it's a big job, but they were constantly collecting the data, which we need desperately in this area. And I'm just wondering if those places are installed already. And anyway, just appreciate all of your work. And thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you.
Okay. V, we're going to come back to you for the final time. And then for everyone in the chat, I've also provided the phone number. V. Okay, V, I apologize. Again, I encourage you to use that phone in option. Anne. Okay, Anne, I encourage you to use that phone in option. I apologize. Tom, we're going to come to you for the final time. I think you were also having issues.
I am hitting unmute. Hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, Tom.
As a resident of Oakland who lives between the two, but closer to 580, and as a lifelong career transportation professional, I welcome a proper professional study of this issue with full community input and coordination with the many other topics. One item I would like to bring up is that by and large, there are far more origins and destinations for heavy trucks along 880 and 580. My concern is that truckers are always in a hurry. 880 tends to have a lot of congestion. And what we may see is truckers opting for 580 and then to save time and then cutting across Oakland between 580 and 880. Unfortunately, our surface streets between the two are not very good for that purpose. I hope that Caltrans is able to properly model and report back on how this may impact.
Okay, George.
Can you hear me? Yes. Hello, my name is George. Hi. My name is George Naylor. I'm a resident of the Laurel District. I live about 8 blocks from I-580. And I just want to say that I am totally in support of doing a comprehensive study to evaluate the impacts of allowing trucks on I-580. I think that we have a real opportunity here to have a healthier Oakland overall. But I think that, the other thing is I want the decision to be based on facts. The policymakers are going to be making a really difficult decision. They need facts to help them with that. I hope that there is a focus on health outcomes and impacts. That's typically not done in these traffic studies. Because one of the things I'm concerned about is even if you shift trucks to I-580, you may still have very poor health outcomes along I-880. I hope to see, a mitigation plan and an action plan to focus on health outcomes when trucks are shifted.
Coramander.
Hi, thank you. Supervisor Miley, with all respect, I'm disappointed the Life Academy students were used to tug our heartstrings on this issue. We were asked to believe these kids are concerned with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This does not impress me that they would actually be involved in that without an activist teacher with an agenda where these kids should not be involved in at this stage. The ban was declared permanent by Ellen Corbett and Governor Davis signed that law. Now you're saying politicians are saying something is permanent until you decide to commission a study based on 6th graders that comes to a conclusion an activist teacher wants. I want to know where the teacher lives who ginned up these kids to contact Supervisor Miley and KQED. There's no structural racism here. We live along 580 ourselves and have a quite diverse community. Many people of color here. That argument just isn't valid. The ban is also financially motivated. 580 just had its surface treatment for the first time in 70 years since it's been created. And that's the lack of heavy trucks. So we are against getting rid of the ban. Thank you.
Matt?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you for hosting this event. I myself am a lifelong resident of Oakland along 580. I have a question and a comment. I know that hopefully this study will give us some answers to how much traffic will be alleviated from 880 by allowing trucks on 580, because I'm looking at Google Maps right now, and if I'm a trucker, unless I'm going over the Dublin grade, going to Livermore, or ultimately over the Altamont, I'm going to be on 880. So my concern here is that an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, and that this is ultimately not a progressive proposal, but this is ultimately regressive. We're rolling back environmental progress. That is my concern.
Casey? Casey, if you could unmute. Casey, maybe you're also having technical issues. You should see a prompt, but
Unmute?
Yes, you are.
Hi, I am going to just jump right into this. I do agree that there is an equity problem. I don't think that lifting the ban on 580 is the answer. I just want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, because when you look at 580 in comparison to 880, with the exception of Jingletown, there is a population density within 100 yards of 580 of houses, hospitals, schools, considerably closer than on 880, like with the exception of Jingletown. Let's not forget about the Port of Oakland and its basic geography of where it's located on 880, and the airport itself. When you guys spoke about the Greenbelt readings are going to be lower because CO2 readings were taken in a Greenbelt on 580. The trees absorb CO2, so of course you're going to have lower readings. We can do strategically placed trees in some areas over by 880 that should reduce the CO2 levels, depending. And then also wanted to jump down and talk about the use of smaller trucks. And I'm getting beat, but Jeff Bezos ordered 100,000 new electric trucks to deliver for Amazon. So I think we need to think differently. If we don't think differently, we're going to end up like Blockbuster.
Luana?
Yes, I'm a resident of Ashland and I live near the 580, and I'm very familiar with the research. My main concern in attending tonight's meeting is that the unincorporated areas such as Ashland have representation in any future stakeholder groups or different committees that are analyzing the issue. Also that we ensure that we're doing outreach to our communities that live along the 580. I support the research. I support as far as finding answers, as far as that we're not trading off these issues between different communities, but we're finding something that works as a region, and that's progressive. But in today's conversation, and even in some of the materials I just don't see the unincorporated areas as part of the conversation.
Patricia?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having this forum. I really feel that, and I tried to put this in the chat, one of the issues that's not being brought up in the conversation is affordable housing. You know, why do people live along the 880 industrial corridor? Because that's the only housing they can afford. So really it's incumbent on the cities, the region, the state to be much more aggressive and progressive about creating affordable housing in healthy environments. And I would just like to see the housing issue be brought into this conversation. No, nobody wants kids to have asthma. There is an equity issue, but it isn't going to be solved simply by distracting us from the larger pollution concerns where we need mitigation in a number of directions. Just to lift a ban and allow trucks somewhere else isn't going to do it. Thank you.
Okay, up next we have Kirby.
Hi. Hello. I just wanted to say the 580 truck ban is probably the most single racist policy that exists on the books in terms of transportation in the city of Oakland. And I very much look forward to the removal of this policy and the addressing of this historic racial inequity in the city of Oakland. Thank you.
Okay, up next we have Verenis. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. You should see a prompt to unmute.
I did say, sorry, I thought I'd hit unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. As you can hear, I'm not from the Bay Area historically. And so I have absolute respect for the people who are living in the affected areas. My problem is that I have been quite vocal that from everything I read in the press, I would like to be able to trust the people who are handling our legal matters in this case. I don't know if I can trust them because of everything I hear on the press about the money that they receive from major polluters for their political campaigns. If you could block that money, then I might be more liable, more encouraged to trust them. But the other thing is, I was trying to think of solutions here. And what about drones? I mean, let's look to the future. I know that drones, you might kind of roll your eyes at drones, but people are using drones. And
I apologize, Verena, I hit mute in the middle of a sentence. I apologize. Mitzi?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mitzi de la Peña Medina. I am a resident of City of Oakland and as well as one of the appointed public health commissioners for District 5. As somebody who works in the life science industry or biotech industry, I am so proud to hear all the remarks made from students from the Life Science Academy. And I also want to mention, as somebody who identifies as a person of color and who grew up in an underserved community by I-880 with siblings that all have asthma, I think it's important that this is treated as a public health emergency. Now, I know I only have 30 seconds left, but in my previous role, I used to work with the Board of Supervisors at San Mateo County. So I know the importance of town halls, but I also see that there is no services for those who are not native English speakers, and representation for the communities impacted is extremely important. So if you guys can answer if there will be additional town halls with accessibility for all other residents who might not have English as their
Okay. Meg? Meg, you should see a prompt to unmute. Meg, you are unmuted. Maybe you're having technical issues. We will come back to you. Ed Hernandez.
Good evening, community leaders. Thank you very much for the time here. I look forward to reading more about the study. I don't look to support a ban, lifting the ban. I really want to make sure we can find solutions to reduce our carbon impact in our communities, especially when they're impacting more people of color. I think really we have to look at what's driving diesel and pollution. It's our desire for convenience, some necessity and demand. So how do we have a prime impact fee, talking about Amazon, other solutions that are other users that are out there, that we're seeing goods coming through 880, other ports. What is sort of the tracking effort to see the impact of those products coming through our communities? And how do we sort of drive solutions forward that we maybe have a carbon impact fee, a convenience fee that we can maybe reinvest and help people have healthier outcomes? I look forward to reading more, hearing more, and thank you for the time here today. Best wishes.
Thank you. Justin?
Hi there, Justin Williams, resident of Oakland. I want to express, thanks for all the people bringing color to all facets of this issue. Definitely agree that there are a lot of, structural racist and, other discriminatory policies at play that led to the history of this. However, I do think we need to look at the reality. Along the 580 corridor, there's about 25 public schools. I looked at Oakland public schools, of which 85% of the attendees are people of color. 72+% are low income folks. So kind of curious how we're saying this is disproportionately affecting people of color, when if the ban was lifted, all those students of the same community would now be subject to the same level the people of East and West Oakland are. So I think we really need to look at this from a facts perspective in terms of equity, and I definitely encourage the study, but it also seems like we're just spreading it around if we just immediately pursue a lifting of the ban.
Gina?
There have been some speakers frustrated about a comment someone made about sharing the burden of truck emissions. I don't see this comment as wanting to force others to suffer, but instead calling out that we as members of this community all benefit from what these trucks provide. We all order off Amazon, get mail, go to restaurants, or go to the grocery store, all which utilize truck deliveries. And if we all want to enjoy what trucks provide, it's not fair to force only some members of our community to bear the brunt of the negative effects that the presence of trucks causes. Lifting the ban is a way to mitigate the imbalance of the effects of trucks in Oakland while we move to more green energy solutions in the years to come. Also, I would like to reiterate that I appreciate the students and teachers at Life Academy being here tonight. These students have been able to provide firsthand experience and take a stand on their health, which I think we should all applaud and not consider students caring about their own bodies as a political move. Thank you.
There is a speaker who used an AOL address. It's an email address as their name. Joanna, perhaps, is the name.
Yes, that's me. I just wanted to say that, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Yeah,
Yes, we
I just
can.
wanted to say that I lived in the Fruitvale area and I lived on 36th Avenue, and I was like 5 houses down from the railroad tracks and maybe 7 houses down from the freeway. And, I moved upper towards above Foothill, when I was 11. But I understand what these kids are saying, because living there, you would walk home from Lazier and you could feel the soot all over your body, and it's just not comfortable. So, I agree with the person that said there has to be better housing. People have to be moved away from that situation, or barriers or trees or something to separate people from that freeway should really happen. And it is a concern, and I do believe these kids because I lived it. And I just wanted to say that, and I just wanted to thank you for your time.
I'm not seeing any other individuals with their hand raised. We would ask at this time, if folks were unable to raise their hand due to technical issues, to use the chat function to indicate that you have a question. Supervisor Miley is not asking you to write out your question, just indicate, I have a question. I see that Anthony raised his hand.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the information today. I think this was a worthwhile discussion to have, probably the start of many more to come. Regarding the Caltrans study and the potential for that kind of starting in 2023 and then trailing, hopefully not beyond that point, I'm wondering if there's any creative seed funding ideas that could be explored to the effect of maybe advancing that study to more of a front burner versus back burner activity. Kind of with that too, I'm thinking the community engagement portion of that is something that would be a minimal cost item that could start now, kind of in earnest, reaching out to the communities that would be affected, getting their takeaway, both 580 and 880 side. I reside closer to 238 and 880, and I agree that this can't be kind of a shifting from one neighborhood to another neighborhood approach. But we should look at all measures, whether it be kind of aging out trucks, diesel trucks that are 2014 and older, ensuring that there is muffler capacity to prevent emissions from outpouring. Variety of things that we could explore.
Thank you. I see Meg. Meg, you are unmuted. Meg, we will come back to you for a final time. V, believe you're still having technical issues. I apologize. We will attempt to respond to you as part of our
Can
written
you hear me?
responses. Yes, we can.
Woo! Finally, I'm so sorry, but I'm so excited and I'm so mad at the same time. So, hello everyone. As an Oakland native who has lived in North Oakland, West Oakland, and East Oakland, I find this environmental racist policy law to be extremely heartbreaking. I can cry. I don't know if you guys can hear my voice. Like, I can literally cry. I just don't understand that those who live near 580, and I live there now, are against sharing truck chemicals when those near 880 are drowning with truck chemicals. But not only truck chemicals, BART chemicals, Amtrak chemicals, other train chemicals, because yes, all these mega transportation vehicles are in the flats near 880. True, we need less polluting solutions, but for starters, we need to begin by helping our brothers and sisters, our children living near 880. I mean, I just don't understand how we are not listening with our ears and heart to those brave children who just spoke. So yes, please remove that darn ban for the sake of our children, and let's stop the me mentality. It's one Oakland, one. When one side hurt, we all hurt.
Thank you, V. Patricia? Patricia, you're unmuted. Okay, Patricia, we'll come back to you. I think you're having technical issues. James? James, you should see a prompt to unmute.
Hi, sorry about that. Hi, James Winterbottom. I'm a resident of Oakland in the Lakeshore area. I just wanted to voice my support and encourage a study, but I also want to reiterate what some others have said, which is to really encourage the consideration of land use around the two highways. 580 cuts directly through residential neighborhoods, hospitals, schools for the entire duration of 580. My son's preschool, for one, is about 20 feet from 580. So just want to ensure that we're not just considering, overall pollution, but also the number of people impacted. And the other thing I want to reiterate from other people's comments is to ensure that we're talking about noise pollution as well. There really is virtually no noise abatement on 580 currently. I mean, at the Lakeshore area, it's an elevated highway with a concrete substrate, and it's incredibly loud even with just cars on it. So I wanted to ensure that noise pollution is actively considered in the study as well. Thank you.
Kathy? Yes, you are fairly quiet, but yes, we can hear you.
So my playground was from Seminary to 98th Avenue, and I went to school at Haynes Court near the Coliseum. Currently, I live 2 blocks away from the 580 Fruitvale Coolidge exit. So, I do have experience growing up in Oakland, areas that we're talking about that's being impacted. But one thing I did want to highlight is one person's comment about how if we're going to lift the ban, it would still affect kids of color. Times in a nuanced way are the class privileges and class access to better those homes are valued lower for a reason, and the class access for that population to better air quality is
Thank you. Meg and Patricia, I think you are our last two speakers with the hands raised. Meg, Patricia, it says you're both unmuted.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I actually just already spoke and I didn't know how to
Perfect.
lower my hand, but I
Okay,
do.
Patricia, we will lower
Yeah.
your hand. Perfect.
Go ahead and lower my hand.
Thank you. I apologize. Meg? Okay, Meg, I apologize. Feel free to reach out to the supervisor's office. We will get back to you as best we can. John?
Hi, I'm John. I live in San Leandro, not far from 580. I'm not a longtime resident of the Bay Area. I chose to move here because I don't have truck traffic near my home. I have to say that the reason why I came to this call is I was incensed by the idea that this is inherently racist. On my street, half the houses have actually turned over in the past 12 to 14 years, and more than half of the people that moved in are Black and brown people, and my house is a mixed race house. So to say that this is inherently racist is ridiculous to me. The other side is 580 is an easy target because it already exists and was brought into existence as a truck ban in the first place. If we're really going to be advocating for other communities, then we need to put a freeway up through Shattuck and Berkeley. We need to build out the 238 through Hayward so that we equally all can breathe in the same pollutants. The solution to pollution is not dilution. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Supervisor, I am not seeing any other folks with their hands raised, and no one else in the chat has indicated.
Okay, very good. Very good. Let's see if we can get back on the screen so I can see folks. So I want to thank all the comments we've heard this evening. It's been, I mean, a lot of very tremendous comments that Caltrans, the Air District, my office, I'm sure the two mayors, we all need to take into consideration. It's just been very robust, the feedback that we've received this evening. Before I do any concluding wrap up, I'd like to see if the Air District or the mayors have any, or Caltrans have any concluding statements, and then I'm going to wrap us up for the evening.
Miss Margaret from the community like to do some wrap up, have some wrap up.
Why don't we start with you, Margaret, then?
Okay.
I defer all my time to Miss Margaret.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, okay, girlfriend. Look, I have really enjoyed hearing these different perspectives. I put in the chat if people want to get in touch with West Oakland Environmental Indicators to continue this conversation, dialogue, or a decision of some next steps, contact us. I'm also very grateful that people stayed up to 9 or 10 to address some of these issues. And this is a promising process that has never happened to the hills or to the flatlands. So we sincerely have to thank the young people and their teacher for supporting them to ask the questions that was asked about this. But I see that this is not about a sprint. This is a marathon. It's been a marathon for my 75 years that I will be on New Year's Eve. And I'm hoping that some of y'all have the same energy that I have to stay in this race, to support making a community life much better. So I'm very thankful to hear different perspectives, and I'm thankful that Nate put in the energy with his staff, the time, and other people, air quality who came together to do this, and Caltrans. This is still a learning process for everybody. And thank you and good night.
Well, thank you, Margaret, and couldn't have said any better than you just said. And let me see if Caltrans or the Air District staff have anything, or Mayor Clutter. I think Mayor Schaaf said she would defer to Mrs. Gordon. Anybody else?
Yeah, Supervisor, this is Dina Altonsi with Caltrans. I just want to thank you for convening this forum and allowing this conversation to take place. Lots of great input here, and we are taking notes of everything that was said here in this discussion and some of the issues and concerns that were raised, and we want to make sure that we do address them as we go through the study. Looking forward to more conversation with the community, including the unincorporated areas, because I know there's a lot of concerns with this area, but thank you for this opportunity.
Air District or Mayor Cutter, anything?
Just thank you, Nate. I appreciate the fact that we were here to listen. Listen, we did. I know it's not the last that we're going to talk about this, and I'm really excited to hear. I know with San Leandro, sometimes I feel like we did not do the work that we needed to do to find out where our pollution was. And if you can't measure it, then you can't fix it. So I'm really happy that we're addressing this. Thank you.
Director Miley, I also wanted to thank you for convening us here this evening. We've heard a lot of great comments from the community. The Air District, as you know, is committed to being able to reduce air pollution throughout the Bay Area and especially the overburdened communities. And so we remain committed to help in this process, working with Caltrans to get this study funded. We'll help in getting that done. And then, of course, providing our technical assistance and community engagement efforts as well to make this happen. So thank you. Thank you, Nate.
Okay. And as Ms. Mark Gordon pointed out, I just want to co-sign. Yes, I think it's been a very rich discussion. We've gotten a lot of input, a lot of information, and the whole purpose of tonight was to provide information, to provide some transparency, to hear from folks. My office, working with the Air District and working with Caltrans, will summarize all the questions we've gotten, the information in the chat. The meeting tonight was recorded. It was on Facebook as well. So people can go back and listen to it as those that weren't able. We had over 400 people that started with us. We're down to about 170 now. So a lot of folks stayed on. This is a very important issue. We do, I want to try to come up with a win-win. I'm engaged because like I said, I'm on the MTC, I'm on ABAG, I'm on the Air District. I represent a good, healthy portion of the area that's involved with the 880 corridor and the 580 corridor. I represent the unincorporated area, Ashland. Want to make sure their voices are heard. So I'm kind of in the middle of all this. So I can guarantee you that we want to have a robust discussion. And I do feel it's important to have those studies. I really think it's essential to have those studies. And I'm not going to predetermine where those studies are going to take us, but we want to make sure that we have them and we have community engagement and have a robust and a community engagement that people have a lot of confidence and trust in. And, and then one person asked about the legal. That'll be taken into effect as well. So we'll be looking at that. Language accessibility. We want to make sure that it's accessible to folks who are monolingual, so they understand as well. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that this is honestly taken up. But at the end of the day, if we're going to try to push for a win-win, but like President Lincoln said, you can please some of the people all the time. You can please all the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. I hope he's wrong. I hope we can please all the people all the time. So we'll try to do that to the best of our ability, please all the people all the time, because we really do want to try to come up with a win-win. We don't want to just shift the problem. So thank all of you for tuning in. Stay tuned. More to come over the next year or two around this. And if you have any questions, you can always contact my office. We'll answer them. Contact the Air District, or contact Caltrans or the mayor's office. But between all of us, we should be able to help keep you engaged. So thank you all this evening. Everyone be safe and make sure you get vaccinated. I always like to say that, get vaccinated, get that booster shot. We're still dealing with COVID, because hopefully if we can get out of dealing with COVID, we can start having these meetings in person. So thank you all. Have a safe holiday. Stay well. Bye.